thank you very much, Nasi, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here to talk about education, specifically higher education, but also K-12 education. At least one educator essentially at this school this week. And I guess I'll start with some prepared remarks, and then what we'll do is we'll sort of open it up to a question and answer kind of dialogue, if you will, to make sure that I'm not boring you to death. One of the quotes, one of my favorite quotes, is by Horace Mann, and it's that education beyond all devices of human origin is the great equalizer of the condition of men, the balance wheel of the social machinery. This sentiment evokes bright hopes for the father of our public education system. He wrote that nearly 150 years ago. And it would be some years after that until we had the first attempt to put such a noble cause into action. And we're almost approaching the 100th year anniversary of compulsory education in this country. So since 1918, every student has been required to complete some level of education. And this marked one of the rare moments in our nation's history where a common moral purpose was adhered to. We made the commitment to our children that regardless of their background, they should have access to a high-quality public education. Education would become, at least we hope that it would become, the great equalizer. Race and privilege no longer would be the prerequisites for advancing one station in life. At least that was the dream, the best hope for a new promise of education. Of course, the system was flawed from the outset. And besides the best intentions of a few enlightened promoters, race and privilege still found its way into the system, corrupting its best intentions. Today, we're still working at forcing out the worst discriminations of the system. Even with its imperfections, the education of so many young Americans had an immediate impact on the nation, a lasting impact on us today, as we continue with the public school experiment. I believe most of us would agree the public education system today that has evolved over the last century is far from perfect. There are so many examples of things going right, but we can just look here in our own city to see that things are not perfect. And that's a challenge that we'll continue to face, and we'll need to inject some innovation and rededicate ourselves to that cause over and over. And we'll get into that a little later. But I also agree that the idea that every child should have an opportunity to achieve his or her maximum potential is always at the heart of education. And so I'll give you some statistics. About 78% of all students in Pennsylvania graduate from high school. That number is good, but there's 22% lost opportunity there. Particularly given the fact that we are moving into what I like to call an intellectual economy. Things are, we're still building tangible things, make no mistake, but our biggest asset today is human capital, because we want to do things smarter, faster, better. And with that statistic, it's above average. It's about a C+, but we should strive to be 100%. And when we look into that number, about who's graduating, there's a huge inequity. 84% of whites are graduating from high school, while Hispanics, blacks, and other minorities are graduating at less than 50%. And that's a huge issue in the Commonwealth. This statistic alone is extremely alarming, considering the high cost of school dropouts. The dropouts will cost the state over $8 billion in lost wages over their lifetime. That's a huge number. The real tragedy is that those students who manage to excel and graduate will have trouble advancing to college, which sort of gets me to higher education. In 2007, I introduced a bill called the Reach Scholarship Program. The Reach Scholarship Program basically says that if you achieve where you are, you don't have to worry about the dream of college. You don't have to worry about the financial burden of college. If you have a cumulative 3.0 in 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, and you have 90% attendance, you could attend any one of the 14 state schools for free. That would be Cheney, Westchester, Bloomsburg, Millersville, IUP, California University of Pennsylvania, and so on. The state would pick up the tab for tuition and fees. And if you wanted to go to any other institution of higher learning, as long as it's located here in Pennsylvania, the state would pick up, they would give you a scholarship in the amount of the average cost of one of the 14 state schools, which is roughly around $6,600. So you could go to Temple University, which is roughly about $11,000, about half the price, with the Reach Scholarship. And we did this for a number of reasons. In my travels, I talked to a lot of high school students, and when I go into classrooms, I ask them, how many in here want to go to college? And I think everybody raises their hand. When I ask how many have figured out how they're going to pay for it, I think you get about 2, 3, maybe 5%. And so, we've introduced that knowing that sort of the financial burden associated with college is one of the biggest factors in keeping people from pursuing higher education. And we decided that we should do something about that at the state level. And this is not a new idea, it's not a unique idea, it's actually been going on since 1993. The first iteration of it, which happened in Georgia under what they call the Hope Scholarship program. And there are about 8 other states that have something similar to that. And so this bill that we introduced would cost about $350 million. And my argument is, and has been for the past 3 years now, is that when we have a budget that's $28 billion, and budgets reflect priorities, that we should find it within our priorities to make sure that we send more young people to college, considering the fact that it improves their life chances, number one. And what I didn't say about the bill, part of the bill is that if you do take advantage of it, you have to stay in Pennsylvania for 5 years afterward. I could cite you a number of studies that would tell you that if you stay somewhere 5 years after college, you tend to plant roots there or raise a family there. And that's important to Pennsylvania's future, because we're going to need to have companies that are located in Pennsylvania to provide jobs. And one of the biggest things that people are looking for is an educated workforce. So we can sort of take care of the educated workforce by making sure that we take the financial burden off the table, number one. And another piece of that, which I'll talk more about a little later, is that Pennsylvania's fastest growing population is the elderly. And it's different from Florida's growing elderly population in the fact that they lack affluence, like the seniors in Florida do. And we have a number of programs here that are great for our elderly population, but I don't know that we'll be able to keep those up at the same level that we do today if we don't rebalance our population and infuse it with a group of college-educated workers. And so we introduced that bill in 2007, and for a number of reasons. It's great to take the financial burden off the table, but also in talking to particularly young folks that I represent Huntington Park, Frankfort, Feltville, Almy, and Oxford Circle, and in those communities, there is a lack of sophistication when it comes to navigating the process for loans and the number of grants that are out there for college. And one of the other flaws that's in our current K-12 education system is that we are underrepresented in terms of output. So there isn't somebody who, a young person in one of the public schools can go to and spend the required amount of time to get them to understand these complex systems that are out there to help them attain college education.